Hey, David Ralphoff here. This is another video on testing. If you haven't checked out my previous video on just what is testing and the benefits of it and just some more basic info, I recommend checking that out first. But in this video, I'm going to be getting into an example of like how it can help you help guide you when you're writing your software. So in the previous example, I used something really trivial like just adding two numbers together. And in this video, I'm going to be doing something just slightly more complicated. So I think the example that I'll use is just trying to print out a name, which sounds pretty simple, but it's going to introduce a little bit more complexity than the first example that I used. So I'm going to be shrinking this video down here and just sharing in the background this window that I have open, and you can see here I've got a document open. I'll be writing this example in Ruby just because I can do that quickly, but the language doesn't really matter. This will kind of apply to whatever language you're using. And then on the right over here, you can see this is the output from whenever we hit run up here. And if you haven't checked it out before, this is a really useful site for just writing some code really quickly and seeing if it works as expected. It's a really good resource for if you're just getting started, you want like the easiest possible route for getting set up to write some code and run it and see if it works. It has some other uses that I'll probably get into in later videos. But so anyway, back to focusing on testing. So the idea with testing is you want to be able to run your test and make sure that your software is behaving as you would expect it to behave. And it has a lot of benefits, and one of those benefits is it can kind of help you make small changes quickly and have confidence that you're not breaking existing behaviors, and it can kind of force you to focus on one thing at a time. There's lots of other benefits, but when you're just kind of writing code, that's like one of the nice quick benefits of it. So just to keep things as simple as possible, this is going to be the form that I'm going to use for our test here. So if you're not familiar with Ruby, basically it's just saying put this string or output the string. So we're going to put in a description here of what we think should happen, and then in here inside these curly braces we're going to put in the actual a quality check that we want to do to make sure that the thing we're doing is producing the value that we're expecting. So I'm just going to run that real quick. Actually, I've already run it here, so you can see over here it's just saying here's the description and here's that value of true. So let's say we wanted to do something like we wanted to have a class that represents somebody's name, so we can make an instance of a name, and we would provide maybe just to keep it simple, like first, middle, and last to start with. So we know that's kind of the general direction we want to head, and we want to be able to ask that name object, give me like the person's full name. But there's variations that are going to naturally pop out of this. So maybe a large number of people don't have a middle name, so we need to be able to handle that case. And there's lots of other cases like that we could attempt to handle, but I think that's going to be kind of the main one I try to look at here in this video. And as I'm doing this too, don't be if you're not totally familiar either with the language or the concepts that I'm introducing, please don't get overwhelmed by that. Really, the focus for this video is really about how testing can help you out and how it can help you make small changes. So even if you don't understand all the details of this example, this should apply really to anything you're doing. So yeah, I want to have I'm going to end up wanting to have a name, and I'm going to want to know when I provide the pieces of somebody's name that I get the expected full name back. So I'm just going to use my name for this example. So we'll just say full name returns, and I'm not even gonna, well, I guess I can. I'll evaluate in this string. We'll just say David Michael Ralphoff. Okay. So when I run this, actually we want to do name dot new of David. We're going to give it the individual pieces one at a time. And we want to say when we call toString on that it is equal to the string we're expecting to get back. And we're just going to run this here. Cool. So right out of the gate, it's giving us a useful message. It's basically saying, hey, you haven't defined this thing called name, so I have no idea what you're talking about. Uninitialized constant name. So we can go ahead and address that. And we can just make a class up here called name, and that, now when we run that, we should get a different message. So now it's saying wrong number of arguments, given 3, expected 0. So there's an implied initializer here. And by default, it's not going to have any arguments. But what we want is we want to have an argument every time we make a new name, an instance of name, that's going to take, let's just for now say it's going to take a first, middle, and last name. And we just want to have it do anything. Let's just go ahead and run it. We're going to see that fail. Right, so it's no longer just throwing an error. But now it's saying, oh, full name returns. Oh, sorry. This test case is not written correctly. So we should say it returned the thing we're expecting it to return. And then here we're doing the actual call to make an instance of that object with the first, middle, and last name, turning that into a string, and then seeing if that string is the string we're expecting. So I'm going to run that again. Okay, so now we say full name returns David Michael Raffoff is false. So it's not working as we expect. That may seem this may seem like a silly approach because we wrote something knowing it wasn't going to work. But the advantage of that is now we can actually write an implementation of this thing, and we can see that our changes are going to make it do what we expect. So for now, we're just going to hold on to these values. If you're wondering, it doesn't necessarily matter too much for the purpose of this video, but if you're wondering, these are instance variables, and we're taking all the values that are getting passed in when we make the new name and holding on to them, storing them in these instance variables, and those will be unique to each instance of name. So if we had 2 different names, those would be unique to each of those names. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and make another method here. So we have a toString method that we're calling right here. So we're just going to go ahead and write that as well. And for now, we could just have it return anything. Let's just say empty string, doesn't matter. We'll run this again. Okay, so we can see our test is still failing, unsurprisingly. We're expecting it to return David Michael Raffoff. We should probably actually indicate that that is a string. And it's not doing that. So just run that again to show it's the same output. So now we're going to take all those pieces of the name that we've created, and we're going to go ahead and let's do something that's not going to work here. So let's just say we did the easy, obvious thing, and we'll just add these all together, right? That might be the first thing that strikes you as you're doing this. And as you run it, it's still going to fail. It's going to say full name returns David Michael Raffoff, so it's false. if you're paying attention closely, you'll notice that we're expecting spaces to be between these, and there are no spaces between them. So this is going to be idiomatic Ruby code, by the way. I'm trying to make this as clear as possible to those of you who are not familiar with how Ruby works. It's probably worth mentioning too that by default Ruby just returns values, so this may be a little more obvious if I say return. So what we're going to return here is the first name plus a space plus the middle name, the instance variable for the middle name, plus a space plus the instance variable for the last name. And we'll go ahead and run that again. And here we go. Full name returns David Michael Rafoff. So yeah, this is kind of cool. So you can see that, you know, we've written our test, the test didn't pass, and then we just basically tweaked the code until it, you know, we made changes to the code until it passed, and we can see that it's doing what it's promising to do. Now, at this point, if you're familiar with Ruby or even other languages, you may notice this is a little goofy, the way that we're doing this. We're just manually like putting all these strings together. And this is one place where tests can really help you out if you're not happy with the actual implementation. Once your tests are green, that kind of frees you up to like do whatever you want to do with the implementation. And as long as the test will pass, you're good. So it's kind of the safety net. And that's one of the big benefits of it is if you've got good test coverage, you can go in and make changes. Test coverage meaning you have tests covering all the expected behaviors. And as long as those still pass, then you know the changes you're making didn't break anything. So let's do something a little more idiomatic. We'll do this in steps. We'll do something that's more idiomatic for Ruby. So in Ruby, you can just make a string and you can interpolate values into that string, which just means it's gonna evaluate them and insert them in the string. And a lot of languages have support for this. So what we'll do instead is we'll just go ahead and interpolate all these values. And this pound sign and the curly braces are just saying to interpolate a value. So now we're going to just going to say, hey, this is the actual string that we want. We're going to rely on the fact that Ruby just automatically returns the last value from that method, and we're going to say give us a first with a space, give us the middle and a space, and last. So we'll go ahead and run that, and there we go. We can see that it's still working. And if you were worried for some reason that it passed, you got like a false positive, you could just play around with it and run it again with a slight change, and you'll see it is failing. So this is working as expected. And you could take different approaches. You could do a join. So you could say, hey, I've got all these things that I want to join together. And last, and you could just do a dot join with a space. And that'd be another implementation you could do. So we'll run it again. And we can see we're still getting back true. So this is pretty cool. Like, you know, we've got these tests. They're in place. So as long as if we want to make changes to our implementation, basically we can just really quickly see if all the tests are still passing. But yeah, so this is just digging in a little bit deeper into you know, the advantages of testing. And like I said, I wouldn't worry too much about whether you understand all the Ruby here or all the way that this is structured. It's just the idea is the important thing, and it can apply to any language that you're using. And it's really something you can start pretty much right away as you're beginning to learn, and I recommend taking advantage of it. So yeah, thanks for joining me in this video. If you're interested in learning more about getting into programming and some of the things that you should be thinking about along the way, hit that subscribe button down below. If you like the video, hit like. I'm going to be doing more videos on this topic, and I also have a lot of videos already that you could go back and check out if you're interested. But yeah, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. If you're interested in seeing more videos like this, please click the subscribe button down below to be notified about new videos. Also, if you're interested in helping out the channel, I have links in the description to my Patreon page, as well as Amazon links to all the gear that I use to make these videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.